Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. On this show, I dive into everything basketball related, from the NBA to the brackets and down to the prep level. I'm your host, Nick Robin, and today we're going to talk about the Lakers Game 4 win, whether this Lakers team could take down the Warriors dynasty, why the Heat are built for the future, and lastly, I'll discuss Jeff Pearlman's new book, 3 Ring Circus, that I just started last week. Got in the mail, and it's funny, when I was younger, my parents were worried that I only read sports books, and my teacher reassured my mom and my dad that this was just a phase, and over time it would pass. That was 17-ish years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and things really haven't changed. There's just nothing better to me than reading a sports book. I love just soaking up all the knowledge I can on not just statistics, but moments and times with particular teams. And nothing is more interesting than the early 2000s Lakers with Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and the mediator, Phil Jackson, just taking care of everything. But now let's move on to last night's Game 4 win for the Lakers. And it didn't seem like it, but last night's game had the making of a must-win game. So in Game 3, the Lakers, not blown out, but were taken out. Were taken out by Jimmy Butler, who went for an insane 40-point, 13 assists, 11 rebound game. And in the history of the NBA Finals, that's the first time anyone has ever posted those numbers in a Finals game. Pretty impressive for a guy that most people last year didn't think was worth a max contract, did not think he could be the best player on a finals team. But as he's done all postseason long, he has denied the naysayers. And look at the journey he had to go through to get to the finals. Took out the Pacers in round 1. And that was a solid Pacers team. Tyler Warren was on fire in the bubble. Victor Oladipo still coming back from injury. And yes, they were missing a couple of their key players, but they still went in and had a clean sweep. Next round, the Milwaukee Bucks, the best team in the NBA this year, and one of the best teams, as I mentioned several times on this podcast, of all time. If you look at the point differential, going in before the bubble, they were 6th or 7th all time in point differential. And Miami came in, punched them in the face, and won in a gentleman's sweep 4-1. Then next round against a tough Celtics team that, on paper, looking at the Celtics roster, they have 3 of the best 4 or 5 players in the entire series. You have Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, who has gone to another level this year, and then Marcus Smart, one of the best defensive players in the NBA and a nightmare for most teams. He might shoot you out of games, but he's that cliche player that he just makes winning plays time and time again. The Heat came in, didn't even need 7 games, took them out in 6. And they were down in games 1 and 2, and the Heat just don't go away quietly. So yes, last game, Game 3, Butler came in, historic performance without, and let's just remember, without Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic, 2 of the 3 best players on the team. It's impressive. It might be one of the bigger upsets in finals history. A Lakers team, loaded, stacked, top-heavy with LeBron and AD, going against Jimmy Butler and the guys who had to sub in because of the missing players, Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard, who's barely played this entire postseason, and Jimmy Butler put the team on his back, and it was really a Jordan-esque performance. And one of the biggest takeaways from the performance is Jimmy Butler did not make a single three-pointer in a league that has gone from inside out, from out in terms of shooting from the perimeter. I don't think there's much else we can say about Jimmy Butler. Even if they lose 4-1, the fact that they took away one game when missing two of their best players has to mean something. So let's go back to Game 4 now. Back to Game 4. So again, this is a must-win game for the Lakers. They're up 2-1, but they lost Game 3, dramatic fashion. Bam Adebayo's back for Game 4, and for most of last night's game, it looked like the Heat were going to pull it off. They were within a couple points of the Lakers the entire game. They took a lead in the first half, and even without Goran Dragic, it looks like his injury is too much. We saw him practicing at the beginning of Game 4, but just couldn't put pressure on that foot. It's a tough injury that takes at least a couple weeks to come back from. However, I think the Heat have enough depth where they can give away minutes to Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, Andre Iguodala, Kendrick Nunn. I mean, heck, you can even throw out Udonis Haslem out there. I know the guy's 40 years old, but he has 6 fouls to give out. Hit LeBron a couple times. Kick Anthony Davis when he's down. Put more pressure on the Lakers' two best players. Tire them out. Look at the early 2000 Laker teams. Whenever they lost, it's because they put pressure on Shaquille O'Neal. They tired him out. They made him work for his 25 and 12. Don't let it come easy to the other players on the Lakers. However, AD showed up defensively. Bam Adebayo did, let's say, limited him is a exaggeration because he still got 22 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, but it was more on the defensive end of what made the difference in this game. Anthony Davis, 4 blocks, 1 steal, and the guy covers so much ground. He can basically cover 2 to 3 guys at once. It makes it very hard to score on this Lakers team. And it looked for a moment that neither team was going to crack 100 in this game. For the Lakers, they barely did. They got 102. The Miami Heat with 96. And this was a defensive duel from the start. Neither team was getting easy baskets. And like it's happened all series, way too many threes. I know that this is just how it's played, but the Lakers, 39 threes. Yes, you hit nearly 36%, but they've been so much better scoring inside the paint. And outside of Bam Adebayo and I guess Kelly Olynyk, the Lakers have so many bigs to throw at the Heat. LeBron, AD, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard. I don't think Miami Heat have the players to stop that barrage of bigs. Throw it into the paint, get some easier buckets instead of chucking it up from 3. Overall, this was a great game. Back and forth, even the entire time. Each team going on separate runs. But it was a tough, fought-out game. The Lakers came up on top, and unfortunately, the series is more than likely over now that the Lakers have a 3-1 lead. But this was a great game. It was competitive from tip to the final buzzer, and the most unlikely of heroes for the Lakers. Someone who has probably taken more ridicule than any rotational player in recent memory for the LA Lakers, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, went 6 of 12, 15 points, 5 assists, key buckets down the stretch, was the one who took the big shots in those final minutes. Not LeBron, not AD. LeBron, people are going to criticize him for not shooting the ball down the stretch, but when you're being double teamed, you pass to the open guy, and that's what he did. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope came up huge tonight, and Lakers fans should be rejoicing right now because it looks like they're going to get that 17th title, tying them for the Celtics for most all time. Another big change to this game was putting Anthony Davis on Jimmy Butler from the start. Jimmy Butler was hot out of the gates, hitting his first 5 shots, but later on 6 of the next 7 shots that Butler attempted while being guarded from AD, he was 1 of 7. So AD brought the defensive prowess. When he's not bringing on the offensive side, he's always bringing it on the defensive side, and that's what makes him so valuable. It doesn't come up in the box score, but his presence is always felt whenever he is on the court. And the Lakers look like geniuses now. Last summer, when this trade went down, when they gave up Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and every significant draft pick they had accumulated over the past 6 years, Julius Randle out the door, D'Angelo Russell out the door, and giving up their next picks until the year 2026, I said if they don't win the title next year, they're going to look so dumb. But you got LeBron, you have AD, throw 3 other guys on the court and let them go to work, and that's basically what they did this year. Let's not count our chickens before they hatch because it's not over yet, but I'm very certain the Lakers will hold up that Larry O'Brien trophy, whether it's Friday or Sunday, is yet to be known. Let's take a look now at our discussion from last podcast. It was whether AD could win the Finals MVP over LeBron James. And as of right now, I think LeBron, over these past 2 games, has overtaken Anthony Davis, although he has been extraordinary on the defensive end. But if we look at the leaders for the Lakers, LeBron now leads in total rebounds, points per game, assists. He's second in blocks and second in steals to Anthony Davis, but on the offensive end, he is doing everything right. However, Anthony Davis is efficient, 60% from the field, 54.5% from 3, from a guy who rarely shot them to begin his career, and a perfect 100% from the free throw line. It's very even, but I assume the writers are going to look at LeBron, who's carried this team throughout the entire playoffs. And yes, they need to change that already. They need a playoff MVP as well as a finals MVP, because the finals MVP is not always the playoff MVP, and the playoff MVP is not always the final MVP. Look at 2007, Tim Duncan. Tony Parker won the MVP. Tim Duncan did not win league MVP or finals MVP. Nobody's going to know now how important he was to that 2007 Spurs championship. That's just one example. There's probably plenty more. That's the last question we have. Who's winning finals MVP, LeBron or AD? I don't know why they can't do like they do in baseball sometimes, like in 2001 when Curt Schilling and Randy Johnson were both extraordinary in the World Series for the Diamondbacks because they weren't winning the title without one or the other. They needed both of them to win the World Series. Same goes to this Lakers team. Without LeBron and without AD, this team does not win the 2020 NBA championship. They both need to get the credit. I think the voters should all get around in a circle and just agree that both these guys should win it. They should hold it up together, and it will be the first ever co-finals MVP. It happens in baseball. Why can't it happen in basketball? And I know this podcast just seems like a whole LeBron jerk fest every which episode, but the guy just continues to do things that this league has never or rarely seen before. And I was on Instagram last night and I saw this, I probably was ESPN or something, but here is the stat. There has been 7 instances in NBA history where a player recorded at least 500 points, 150 rebounds, and 150 assists in a single postseason. LeBron James is responsible for 6 of them. 2007, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2018, and now 2020. The only other player to accomplish that, Larry Bird in 1987. LeBron is just a full package. He can score, he can rebound and start the break, and he can pass like no other. He is the perfect basketball player. He may not be the GOAT because he doesn't have the perfection that Jordan has or the titles that Bill Russell has or the longevity yet that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has. But if you were to create a basketball player in a lab, I think it would look something similar to LeBron James. Enough about LeBron, enough about Game 4. After this commercial break, we're getting into hypotheticals and whether or not this Lakers team could beat the Warriors dynasty. We will have the opportunity to see that next year, minus KD. But let's get into it a little bit further right after this break. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
LeBron, AD, and the Lakers are on the brink of winning the championship. For LeBron, it will be his fourth, putting him in exclusive company with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Bill Russell as the four superstars to win 4 or more championships. For Anthony Davis, it will be his first. But critics are going to say that it did not count, that it happened under a pandemic, that they didn't have to go through the Clippers or the Bucks or the Celtics, that they got lucky by facing off against the Nuggets and the Miami Heat, who got hot at the right time, but that they didn't beat the best competition and that it didn't come during a regular season. However, from sources I've spoken to about the NHL bubble, for players it has been almost as hard playing under these circumstances. Bouts of depression, not being able to see their family, not having the freedom to go where they want to go when they want to go there. That it's just feels like isolation. But that's not what this segment is about. I want to know and I want to see if this Lakers team would be able to beat the Golden State Warriors dynasty of the past 5 seasons. So let's rewind a little bit. In 2015, Steve Kerr was hired by the Golden State Warriors, and luckily for him, he decided to reject the New York Knicks offer, which to this day is probably still the worst coaching job you can get in basketball. Enter Steve Kerr. He takes over a Golden State Warriors team that has high expectations for this season. He replaces David Lee in the lineup with Draymond Green, and the rest is history. The Warriors would go on to win 67 games and face off against LeBron James and the Cavaliers in the finals. LeBron had just finished his 4 years of college in Miami and was coming back to Ohio to bring a championship to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Unfortunately, in the first round against the Boston Celtics, Kevin Love gets tangled up with none other than Kelly Olynyk and is out for the rest of the playoffs. Enter Game 1. The Cavs have the lead on the Warriors. Going into OT, Kyrie Irving injures himself, is out for the rest of the series. LeBron, despite his heroic effort, falls short against the Warriors that year 4-2. Next season, most people believe that the Cavaliers can beat the Warriors team as LeBron almost single-handedly beat them the year before. However, the Warriors had different plans, and they were ready to show the world that they were not a fluke. They won their first 24 games of the season and a league record 73-9. Again, they face off against LeBron and the Cavaliers in the finals and take a commanding 3-1 lead. Over the next 7 days, the impossible happened, and LeBron came back from a 3-1 deficit, the only team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit to win the finals. And Ohio and the Cavs finally have that elusive championship, 49 years in the making. Fast forward to that summer, and Big Brother comes in, a.k.a. Kevin Durant, joins a team that went 73-9 the previous season, but did not win the ship, but had won it all in 2015 without him. And from there, Cleveland had no shot. They met in the finals 2 more times, with the Warriors winning a combined 8 wins to 1 loss. We have the J.R. Smith game in 2018, LeBron putting up 50, but no matter what the Cavs threw at the Warriors, they were not beating this Warriors dynasty. And that is what my question is today. Can the 2019-20 Lakers, 2016-17 Golden State Warriors? So I pulled up both the rosters, and with the Warriors, you're looking at one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. They steamrolled through the regular season, winning 67 games to 15 losses. And in the playoffs, they swept the first 3 rounds against the Trailblazers, Utah Jazz, and San Antonio Spurs. Complete demolition. Nobody stood a chance. You had Stephen Curry in the middle of his prime at 28 years old, one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, who shot 41% from 3 that year. You have Klay Thompson, the other Splash Brother, at 26 years old, shot 41.4% from 3. And as a team, they combined to shoot 38.3% from 3. Just ridiculous. So let's take a second to look at that. You take a team in the Warriors that won 73 games the year before. They had 2 of the greatest shooters in NBA history with Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry. They had one of the greatest role players in NBA history with Draymond Green. You add in Andre Iguodala, the 6th man, and the 2015 Finals MVP, Sean Livingston, a player that was supposed to be a superstar, but a devastating injury almost ended his career and almost had his leg amputated, coming in a solid rotational role with the Warriors, with a big game in the 2015 Finals. You have veterans David West, Zaza Pachulia, and then you add Kevin Durant at 28 years old, in the prime of his career, arguably the greatest scorer in NBA history, looking for his first championship. How is anyone beating this team? We're looking at 4 All-Stars, 4 Olympians, Andre Iguodala, a borderline Hall of Famer, and one of the few guys in the league that can slow down a LeBron James. Now let's take a look. We have the 2019-2020 Warriors. LeBron, AD, heavy up top. And then it kind of hits the shitter at that point. You have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Kyle Kuzma, Danny Green, Avery Bradley, Dion Waiters, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, who also played for that Warriors team. For the sake of making this a little bit more fair, let's say JaVale McGee gets to be on the Lakers in this example. Looking at the guard play, you have, again, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Iguodala, Livingston, Patrick McCaw, going up against KCP, Danny Green, Avery Bradley, Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith. I think we're taking the Warriors in terms of their guard play. Looking at the bigs, I think Lakers have this advantage. Not only do they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they have Dwight Howard, who is an efficient, it's not the Dwight Howard of old, but it's an efficient in his 20 minutes of play. And looking at the Warriors, this is probably their one weakness. Kevin Durant, of course, but outside of that, Zaza Pachulia, David West, who's at that point 36, is a little over the hump, Anderson Varejao. The Lakers get the better of this matchup. So let's see, realistically, in a 7-game series, who would win? LeBron's Cavaliers team, I would say, were deeper than this Lakers teams in terms of the other players they had coming off the bench. They still had Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, a younger J.R. Smith, not the one now that has seen barely any playing time this year, along with NBA vets such as Richard Jefferson, Mo Williams, Iman Shumpert. So I'd say the Cavaliers team was a little bit deeper than this Lakers team is. But what this Lakers team has that Cavaliers never did was Anthony Davis. By far, yes, sorry D-Wade, by far the best player LeBron has ever played with. And who on the Warriors is covering Anthony Davis? Kevin Durant, too skinny. Steph Curry, no chance. Klay Thompson, doesn't have the height. Zaza Pachulia, no. Anderson Varejao, no. JaVale McGee, definitely not. That is a mismatch for this Lakers team, something that the Cavs did not have. The Lakers might not have the shooting touch of the Warriors, but they do have guys that can bother Steph and Klay Thompson. Kyle Kuzma, 6'8", 6'7". Rajon Rondo and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would cause issues for Curry. He'd still be able to get a shot off, but with Anthony Davis able to cover 2 to 3 players almost at once, he makes up for a lot of mistakes. Let's take a look at the depth of these two teams. So during the 2016-2017 playoffs, these were the top 8 players in minutes for the Warriors. You had Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala, David West, Sean Livingston, and Ian Clark. For the Lakers, you have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Danny Green, Alex Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, Rajon Rondo, Markieff Morris. So looking at those top 8 players for each team, doesn't look too pretty for the Lakers. As we've seen all season long, this is a top-heavy Lakers team. The plan last summer was basically do anything you can to get Anthony Davis. We will figure out the rest along the way. After all of this, I'm going to say that the Warriors beat this Lakers team, if not 5 games, but in at least 6 games. I don't see it being a sweep because LeBron James and Anthony Davis are not getting swept in the series no matter how talented the other team is. The good part is we can see this next season as Steph Curry and Klay Thompson basically took a vacation this year, as Klay Thompson missed the entire season with a ACL injury, while Steph Curry broke his hand and was limited to only 5 games. But the Warriors are no longer spring chickens. They're no longer that peppy little team that nobody knows about. Steph Curry will be 32 years old going into next season. Klay Thompson will be 30. This team is no longer that young, spunky team that we all grew to love in 2015. They are a little bit older now, and guards that are 6'3" and below do not have a great history of holding up once they get into their early to mid-30s, outside of Chris Paul. That's one example in the whole history of the NBA. I do see, though, Curry's game translating better than most players, because it's not like he's just going to forget how to shoot. Even if he loses a step here or there, I think he'll still have the ability to get his shot off. It will be interesting with a whole year off. People are expecting this Warriors team to just come back and run through the league. That could happen, but it's not a definite. So it's going to be interesting what happens next year. The Lakers more than likely will be the reigning champs. The Warriors are going to be looking to get back what was once theirs. They want to show the world that they don't need Kevin Durant. They can do what they did in 2015 and 2016 without him. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the second pick in the NBA draft, as well as Andrew Wiggins. Do they keep him? Do they package him along with the pick to get another superstar to put next to Klay and Steph and take a little bit of the load off them? Will Draymond Green continue to regress? Will he come into camp in good shape? I'm going to say he does, because they are determined. They have a chip on their shoulder for the first time. People are rooting against them or not taking them into account fully. I'm excited to see what happens, because for the first time since Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors in 2017, the Warriors and Lakers, or the Warriors and LeBron, are now on even playing fields. And unfortunately, they have to go through each other to get to the NBA Finals. And looking at their division, it might be the deepest in the entire league. You have the Warriors, 5 straight finals appearances. The Lakers with LeBron and AD looking to come off a championship season. The Clippers, who are in win now mode since Their two best players, Kawhi and Paul George, only have a year left on their contracts and could easily dip out after this season. And you have the Phoenix Suns, who went 8-0 in the bubble, didn't make the playoffs. They're going to want to show people that they are a playoff contender. And lastly, Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers, who you can never count out. That's 5 teams that could all potentially make the postseason. Just incredible, the talent that not only the Western Conference has, but the entire Pacific Division. Now moving on, we are going to look at this Miami Heat team, and I will tell you why they are built for the future. All of that after this commercial break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back. And I just got finished discussing who would win in a hypothetical matchup of the 2016-17 Warriors, Kevin Durant's first season, or this current 2019-20 Lakers. Had to go to the Warriors due to their depth and shooting. Although the Lakers have the 2 best players on the court, and they typically do in the matchup against any team, the Warriors just have more depth. I mean, they got 4 Olympians, 4 All-Stars. Kevin Durant, the best player, one of the best players in the world, and can shoot lights out. I mean, they shot 38.3% in a single season. That's like a near NBA record. Incredible. But before I move on to why we should be looking out for the Heat over the next couple of years, last night I was at my friend's house and we were watching the finals, of course, and he doesn't know too much about basketball, and he didn't realize about all these one and done players, and we were just looking up the stats, and it's incredible that out of the past 10 drafts, 55 players in the lottery out of 140 picks are one and done. That is incredible. That's more than a third. That's about 45% of the lottery consists of guys who went to college for 1 year. Aside from that little tidbit from last night, we after the game, we wanted to order food, and it literally took us a full hour, almost an hour and a half maybe, to select a place on DoorDash to get our food delivered, what we wanted. We were just so clueless, and we just couldn't select a place, and as soon as we got close to selecting a place, they kept on closing on the app. If you know, most restaurants only deliver 30 minutes prior to closing, or you can only put in an order 30 minutes prior to closing. Otherwise, they shut it down. That happened to us 3 different times. So it was quite a mess last night just trying to get food over to my buddy's house. Finally, we did decide on Wingstop, and it took probably an hour-ish to get over, hour and 10 minutes. So that was an eventful night in its own right. But now, moving on to the Miami Heat. So they made it to the finals this year. Most people would not have said that coming into the year. Jimmy Butler came in free agency. This team last year didn't even make the playoffs in Dwayne Wade's last season. Not a great way to go out. And yeah, Jimmy Butler surprised everyone signing with the Heat. But now that we look a little closer at it, we can see why, because he has that mentality similar to Pat Riley, where he's just, you're the first one in the gym, the last one to leave. That's the kind of mentality that the Miami Heat have built, and that Pat Riley has really built since leaving the Lakers. He started with the New York Knicks with that tough mentality in terms of like, we might not be the most talented, but we're going to hit you where it hurts, and we're going to outplay you and out-hustle you. And he brought that over to the Miami Heat. And looking at this roster, I mean, they got a lot to work with after this postseason run. So with the strong postseason run, the Heat have now become like a premier destination for free agents and disgruntled stars. I mean, look at Butler. He was in Philly. We heard all the issues about he was a locker room cancer. But really, he just wanted to win, and the guys on his team, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, just didn't have the same hustle that Jimmy Butler had. So he comes to Miami. They cruise through the playoffs, going 12-3. They beat Giannis, two-time MVP, and someone who now, according to rumors, he is looking, if he were to leave Milwaukee, Miami would be the number one destination. Along with Victor Oladipo, rumors have also been put out there that he is interested in coming to Miami Heat. He's a free agent this year. I know he's lost a step or two since his breakout season a couple years ago due to injury. But, I mean, it typically takes a year or two to really get your feet under you. I think that would be a great player to add to this team, especially with the free agents that they have. And looking at the list, you have Goran Dragic, who, yes, he is the leading scorer for them in the playoffs, but he's 34 years old. How much longer can he be effective? Kelly Olynyk, Solomon Hill, Myers Leonard, Jay Crowder, Udonis Haslem, 40 years old. I mean, he's probably going to retire. Hasn't played a minute in this finals. And then Derek Jones Jr. So a couple of those players you don't want to lose. Goran Dragic, Kelly Olynyk, Jay Crowder. But I think those guys are all replaceable. Now looking at their assets, if they were looking to make a trade, they still control their first round picks from 2025 to 2017. So that's a huge plus. And looking just at the Heat's top players by postseason minutes, it goes like this: Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jay Crowder, Goran Dragic, Duncan Robinson, Andre Iguodala, Kelly Olynyk, Kendrick Nunn. So out of the 9 names I just said, 3 of them, Dragic, Crowder, and Olynyk, are free agents this year. But look at what they still have. Jimmy Butler is 31 years old. His better days might be behind him, but what we've seen with the medicine and what players can do to their bodies, Jimmy Butler is the type of guy who I believe keeps himself in good shape. He doesn't seem like he goes out and parties or enjoys himself during the offseason. Similar to like Kobe, he's always in the gym. So I don't think he's going to regress too much over the next couple of years. And then going down, Tyler Hero. He's 20 years old. The youngest player to ever start a finals game. The type of experience he has gotten under himself this year is going to go a long way in the future. The guy's only going to continue to get better, get more confident. He can shoot the lights out and isn't afraid of the big moment. And then you have arguably their most important player in Bam Adebayo, a guy who can guard your best player. His offensive game has grown significantly throughout the season. He is only 23 years old. Duncan Robinson, 25 years old. Kendrick Nunn, 25 years old. So that's 5 solid players to build this team around. And Kendrick Nunn started off the year hot, was averaging nearly 20 points a game at one point, tailed off near the end, but it's only his first year, and he's going to continue to develop. So looking at this Heat team, it might not be the most talented team in the league, but they have the right management up top, from Pat Riley to Eric Spoelstra. Pat Riley has now made it to the finals with 3 different versions of the Heat. You started in 2006 with the Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal team. And then from 2011 to 2014, you had LeBron, Chris Bosh, and D. Wade. And then now you have Jimmy Butler and this ragtag group of hooligans with Tyler Hero, who can't even buy a drink for another 6 months. Bam Adebayo, who is just a man-child and is going to continue to get better. Some people think he could be the next Anthony Davis. And then you have Duncan Robinson, who is lights out. He does need to improve on the defensive end, as he's been a huge liability throughout this finals. And then Kendrick Nunn, a go-to scorer in crunch time. And you have guys like Andre Iguodala, although he's 36, he's been in big games. He can mentor some of these younger players, and that is so valuable. You can't really put a price on that. And then, best of all, you're in Miami. The nightlife, the weather, the no sales tax. This is a destination for NBA stars. Outside of LA, I don't think there's a better place that players want to go to. And they have the history behind them now. They've won 3 NBA championships. That's more than a considerable amount of franchises. And I noted on it earlier, but this Jimmy Butler effect, him coming to Miami and the success that he's found, I think that is going to go a long way with a lot of players. It's going to show that all he wants to do is win, and people are going to gravitate towards that. He might not be the easiest to deal with at times, but he gets results. He is a winner now. He was even a winner before this. I know he doesn't put up the flashy numbers like LeBron or Anthony Davis or Devin Booker or all these other players that put up these gaudy scoring numbers. Jimmy Butler just does what he's supposed to do. He plays hard on defense. He gets his teammates involved. He scores when he has to. He doesn't, and this is probably my favorite part of his game, he doesn't chuck up threes when he knows that isn't his shot. He isn't a shooter. He's more of a driver, mid-range game, like a young Michael Jordan, post up, down in the paint with a little fadeaway. He doesn't do what he's not good at, where some of these players continue to chuck up threes, a la Russell Westbrook, when they aren't, when that isn't a high percentage shot for them. So I think the fact that Jimmy Butler came here, a team that didn't make the playoffs last year and was able to lead them to the finals, I think that's going to speak volumes to the rest of the league, and people are going to want to come and play with him. And add in the young Bucks, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, and Kendrick Nunn, and that forms a solid nucleus for the next 3 to 5 years at the very least. And then you have Eric Spoelstra at the helm, who somehow survived, one of the few coaches, actually, to survive coaching LeBron James. And someone who speaks to what the Miami Heat are all about. He was the video coordinator from 1995 to 1999, and now he's the head coach of the team. It shows that when you put in hard work and you shut up and do what you're supposed to do, you're gonna succeed. That's what the Miami Heat are all about, and it starts up top with Pat Riley, who is now in his early mid-70s, and he still hasn't lost a step. And it's taken years for people to notice the culture that goes on in Miami, and it's great to see them finally get their dues. If I was a player in the NBA and my contract was up, and Miami Heat give me a call, I'm taking that call, I'm taking that meeting, I'm flying out to Miami, see what they present, if it's a good fit for me and my career, and if I have to take away a few shots per game, I'm fine with that if it's going to bring me a championship, which for most players, that should be the number one thing on their mind, but it's not. It's how much money am I getting? How many shots do I get? How many minutes am I playing? All this extra BS is why teams are not successful and crumble throughout the season. When you take away all that extra stuff and you just go out there and play the game of basketball the right way, the way the Miami Heat have played throughout this postseason, that is when teams succeed. So again, the Miami Heat are my team of the future. I think every free agent should take a meeting with this team because they know how to win without piling up on superstars. Enough now on the Miami Heat and how they look for the future. After this break, I'm going to discuss a new book I'm reading by Jeff Pearlman called The Three Ring Circus. It dives into the history of the Lakers from 1996 to 2004, that three-peat, and the tension between superstars Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, with Phil Jackson, the mediator of the team. Stay tuned for that.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to Nick's Picks, where we discuss our top fives in everything basketball, to who are the 5 greatest players of all time, to who have the best afros in NBA history, as we did last week. And now today we are doing the best left-handed players in NBA history. And I don't know why, but there's just something smoother about watching a lefty play the game of basketball. The slightly unorthodox shooting form to the sudden diversion of the norm where a lefty gets the ball and starts his slightly different than norm move. There's just something poetic about it. So let's start right now let's actually begin with our current lefty greats in the game. So we have D'Angelo Russell of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who's a great young point guard. Was a first-time All-Star last year, had a little bit of a setback playing for the Golden State Warriors, but still has a bright future ahead of him. Next, we have the 5'9" Isaiah Thomas, one of the most prolific scorers under 6 foot in NBA history. Too bad some hip injuries have taken away from his scoring ability, but did have some great seasons in Boston until he was devastatingly traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's kind of gone downhill from that. Next up, we have Mike Conley Jr., and honestly, one of the more underrated players in the NBA. Spent the majority of his career with the Memphis Grizzlies until this season when he was traded to the Utah Jazz, and he's had a great resurgence during the bubble. And lastly, Ben Simmons. Unfortunately, you don't get to see him use that pretty jumper too much because he's the 3-point to his game is still a work in progress, but he's still young and still has time to turn it on. But he's more of a lefty Magic Johnson with the great passing ability and very solid on the defensive end as well. So those are some of our current lefty greats in the game. Now moving on to honorable mention. And the first guy that comes to mind is Chris Mullin. Effortless flick of the wrist, very smooth jumper, and was a 5-time All-Star, a member of the 1992 Dream Team, and one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. Spent the majority of his career with the Warriors as well as the Indiana Pacers, where he did make a late Eastern Conference Finals appearance against the 98 Bulls, who lost in a devastating Game 7. So Chris Mullin, my honorable mention for the best left-handed players of all time. Moving on to number 5, Manu Ginobili. Just a 2-time All-Star, 2008 Sixth Man of the Year award winner, but a 4-time NBA champion. Part of that Spurs dynasty that continues to go to this day. An amazing teammate and someone who kind of brought the Euro step to the NBA. So not only did he have the nice lefty touch, but also brought one of the most popular moves to the National Basketball Association. Manu Ginobili, number 5 on my list of best left-handed players of all time. Next, number 4, Chris Bosh. And for many of us, we'll just remember Chris Bosh as that third player on The Miami Heat's iconic Big Three, of course, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, went to 4 straight NBA Finals, won 2 championships, but some of his best, most productive years came in Toronto, averaging 20 points in 5 consecutive seasons, although he had to officially retire early due to a blood clot that was found in his lungs and left leg. Very unfortunate, though. Chris Bosh still had plenty of productive years left on him, but he does make my list. Number 4, best left-handed player of all time. Next, number 3, the Admiral, David Robinson. He was part of the 1992 Dream Team, a 10-time NBA All-Star, and then 1995 MVP, a 2-time Olympic and NBA champion. 1999 and 2003 brought home the title and brought home the gold in 92 and 96. Arguably one of the fastest, most athletic centers in NBA history. He was more of a small forward at the center position. A Navy grad who was able to open the floor with his effective mid-range game. And one of only 4 players in NBA history to score 70 or more in a game, the others being Kobe, Bean Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, and a theme of this podcast, Devin Booker. Besides the offensive game, he was also one of the best defensive players in the league, winning the award in 1992. He spent the entirety of his career with the Spurs, which you can't say much for players these days, but you got to still respect the loyalty that the players of the 90s had over today's younger generation. Next, the all-time scorer for left-handed players, James Harden. He's won the league MVP in 2018 and has been a runner-up 4 different times. People have different opinions on James Harden, maybe more due to the fact that he only scores in 2 ways, hitting 3-pointers and getting to the free throw line, kind of flopping to draw contact, but I mean, really, who in the league does not attempt to do that every once in a while? Especially the game I was watching last night. Damian Lillard is a tremendous scorer and basketball player, but there were several plays where he went up for a 3 and tried to draw contact on a player, and honestly, it's just a sloppy way to play basketball, but that's how the game is played, and we might hate it, kind of like that hack a Shaq rule, but hopefully the NBA can do something to alleviate that problem. So again, earlier this season, James Harden became the number 1 all-time scorer for left-handed players, passing none other than number 3 on my list, David Robinson. Yes, there was a method to my madness on why I put James Harden ahead of 2-time champion David Robinson. Let's begin there. First off, that 1999 championship was won in a strike-shortened season. Not saying it doesn't make it any more difficult, but David Robinson more won championships due to the fact that he got a guy like Tim Duncan on his team. And we can say in 1999 that Tim Duncan was right around, if not better, than David Robinson. And then in 2003, David Robinson was more in a reserved role for the Spurs. So yes, he is a 2-time champion, but he was never the best player on either the 1999 or 2003 team. And James Harden, he still has a lot of a career left to play. He's already a 6-time All-Star, 7-time All-Star, will make an All-NBA team once again, probably will finish in the top 3 in MVP voting for the 5th or 6th time in his career. The guy is a tremendous talent, but in order to catch the guy at number 1 on my list, he needs to rack up a couple championships. And moving on to number 1, Bill Russell. Most people wouldn't even know that he is a lefty because, first off, he played over 50 years ago, and nobody remembers basketball from back then because it wasn't even really a popular sport in the fact that the finals were on tape delay. Yes, you would watch a finals 3 to 4 hours after the game has actually ended in real time because it was so unpopular that sitcoms were beating out the NBA Finals. Nobody wanted to watch it. Nevertheless, Bill Russell is the champion of all champions. He is one of only 7 players to ever win the grand prize in college, NBA, and Olympics. He won 72% of his NBA regular season games and is defined as possibly the greatest winner in professional sports and the best defensive player in the NBA. Catch this fact. He averaged more than 20 rebounds in 10 straight seasons. Nobody will ever accomplish that feat. Last player to even average 20 rebounds in a single season was Wilt Chamberlain in 1968-69, the year after Bill Russell retired. So yeah, I don't see anyone averaging 20 rebounds in a single season, let alone in 10 consecutive seasons. And looking back more recently, the last player to even get close to averaging 20 rebounds a game was Dennis Rodman in 1991-92 when he averaged 18.66 for the Detroit Pistons. It was a different game then, a lot more shots, and let's be frank, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell were the minority amongst the league at that time. Not many black players, for obvious reasons of what was going on back then. We're still seeing it today, but yeah, nobody will ever accomplish some of the things that guys like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain have. But there you go, my top 5 left-handed players of all time. Number 5, Manu Ginobili. Number 4, Chris Bosh. Number 3, David Robinson. Number 2, James Harden. And number 1, the ultimate winner, Bill Russell. And there you have it on Nick's picks. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Before we go, before next episode, we might have a new NBA champion for this year. And what an exciting, difficult year it has been. Like with COVID and everything, and these players having to leave their families and go into the bubble for up to as long as 90 to 100 plus days. We got to tip our caps to them. Like, they've done a remarkable job. And for the most part, the players have been on their best behavior. They haven't been breaking curfew or leaving the campus and doing anything they shouldn't be doing. And yeah, again, I want to thank them for bringing entertainment back into our households. And hopefully by next episode, we don't have a new champion, because that would mean that the Heat would have won, extending this series. Because do we really want to see the last series ending in 5 games? I know I don't. And I don't think the rest of the world does, because we want to see a series. We've come this far. We've come this far this year with everything going on. And yeah, again, to have the series end in 5 games would just be a huge, huge disappointment. LeBron, you're going to get your title, but let's at least push it to a 6th game. Jimmy Buckets, the whole world is watching you. This is your team. You're going to go. The Heat are only going to go as far as you push them. So thank you again to the NBA family. And Adam Silver, honestly, you should run for the next president of the United States. He has been flawless throughout this entire process. While the other commissioners and other sports have fumbled here and there, he has been on top of it the entire way. So again, thank you to all out there for listening to my show today. If you could, please go on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you find the GSMC podcast, leave us a comment, give us a rating. We're trying to build this brand out. We're almost there. We're getting there day by day. So thank you guys again, and to all a good night. We'll see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.